It lives in my closet. My name is Reese. I'm 15 years old and I have been living in haunted houses my whole life. I was 10 years old when this happened. I had just moved to a small town in Vermont called Clarendon. Now people say if you were born between 12 o'clock and 1 a.m. you have a special connection with the spiritual world. I was born at 12:32 a.m. and nothing bad had happened until this point. I lived in a barn that had been transformed into an apartment. My family lived in the upstairs apartment and I had the room in the loft. There were closets lining the walls. They were about 3 feet tall and 5 feet wide. On each side there were 4 entrances. I was packing up to go on a vacation with my family when I needed to grab my suitcase which was in this closet. I decided to climb in the closet after opening the entrance where the suitcase was, so I could push it through there. I started to crawl my way through the closet when I reached the suitcase. When I went to reach for it, it was pulled by something. "Hello?" I asked shakily. Got no answer. Then the doors that I opened slammed shut. I tried to push them open but they wouldn't budge. I was so scared. I remember feeling a cool draft roll over my body, giving me goosebumps of horror. After a few minutes of attempted escapes, the door finally opened. But when I got back into what I thought was the safety of my own room, I saw all the lights were off. I felt a sharp pain in my wrist, nothing horrid, just a scratch. I assumed I scratched my wrist on a nail or something as I was struggling, so I shook it off. When I turned on my light, the clothes that I folded and put on my bed were scattered all over the floor, unfolded and messy. I was terrified. Everyone in my family was asleep. They were on the bottom floor so they couldn't have heard me try to escape the closet. Then the pain on my wrist continued. I looked down at my wound to see how bad it was. It wasn't bad in the sense that I needed medical attention. It was bad in the sense of the shape of it. What it meant. There was an upside-down cross on my wrist. It was about 6 inches long. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but when I found out, I was shaken. I never went into that closet again. Whistling spirit. These experiences happened when my daughter and I lived alone in an old house owned by a friend of my mother's. At the time Sarah was 2 and I was pregnant with my son. The house had 2 bedrooms but I preferred for Sarah to sleep with me in the largest one. We hadn't lived there for very long before I had to ask my dad to check the heating system. It stayed extremely cold but only in that room, so I thought maybe a heating duct was misplaced. He found nothing wrong, so I assumed it was caused by the large windows in the room. Shortly after that, Sarah began screaming as soon as she was left in that room alone, and then for 2 nights in a row my bed collapsed for no reason. Again my dad came and repaired the bed, but I gave up and Sarah and I began sleeping on the living room sofa. I got up one morning and went to the bedroom to get our clothes for the day, and the door was locked from the inside. It was easily opened with a butter knife, but it began to be very inconvenient when it was locked every single morning. I ended up simply accepting it and kept the butter knife on a bookshelf beside the door. Now, my daughter had a large collection of porcelain dolls given to her by everyone in my family, and they were kept displayed on a built-in shelf in that room. So the next occurrence that became commonplace was that every morning the dolls would be rearranged and turned facing the wall. Another incident I recall was getting up in the middle of the night to pee. Remember, I was pregnant, so midnight peeing was not unusual. And the potty is located on the wall dividing the bathroom and the dining room. I sat there half awake and began to hear a whistling noise in the dining room which quickly turned into a clear tune. I can't recall the exact tune, but it seemed very familiar at the time. It was definitely not wind. It was a song being whistled in the middle of the night. These things never frightened me because I have had numerous experiences as a child, and my sisters and other family members have always been that way also. We were taught at a young age that it's nothing to be scared of, to accept it and go on. I do wish I knew who it was, but I was never able to find out.